Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to today's video, which is a what I eat in a day. Now I get lots of requests to share what I eat, share cooking stuff in general. And so today I'm sharing with you my whole day of eating, everything I ate from top to bottom, as well as what I fed my family, my boys. If you like today's video, please give it a thumbs up. Thumbs up really help to support my channel, and they let me know, obviously, which videos you guys like seeing. So please hit that thumbs up button. It's super helpful. Also, feel free to let me know in the comments down below if you have any requests or any questions or thoughts, all of the above. Before we hop right in, I want to give a special shout out to my patrons. If you haven't been over to check out my Patreon yet, I will link that down below. I upload exclusive content over there, and I have been for the last couple of years. So if you want to check that out, when you become a patron, you get access to all of those videos, and I appreciate you guys more than you know, especially after this last year of craziness. So with all of that being said, let's hop in to today's video. All right, so for better or for worse, on this morning, we started our morning off with a walk. I say for better or for worse because turns out we were actually a little bit hungry by the end of this. Kind of wished we had eaten before, but it was so beautiful and Logan was so excited to go out on his bike, more excited than he looks. I think he caught on to the drift that I was filming, and so he just kept wanting to run up to the camera. Anyways, you guys know we've had some pretty cool weather here for a long time. I mean, we're going to June and it was still like high 40s yesterday. So definitely living that northern life right now. And I definitely stayed in comfy, cozy clothes the entire day. So I'll just give you that heads up at the top of the video. So I decided on this morning that I wanted to make a really simple omelet. Now, all we had left for eggs was 2 eggs. So I decided that we were all gonna split this omelet, just like kind of like a pie or a pizza, just cut it up into pieces to go with the rest of our food. So I cracked my eggs into my jar, stirred them up, put a little bit of avocado oil onto the pan, tried to evenly distribute that, and then poured my egg mixture on top. Now my eggs were literally just my eggs whipped up with a little bit of garlic powder, a little salt, a little pepper, and then while that heated up on like a low medium heat, I toasted some of my homemade sourdough toast for avocado toast that I wanted to make as well. So I grated up a little bit of my raw cheddar cheese that I bought this last month from Azure Standard. A lot of you guys have been telling me to shop with them, and I've been meaning to for a long time. And last month was my first order with them, but I only got cheese and I ordered with a friend that was placing her order. So I'm dipping my toes into that world. Once my toast popped up, I spread my avocado on it. By the way, as you can see, that's how I get the pit out of my avocado now. I just push it out. The whole knife thing turned out to be way too dangerous and crazy. And after all these years, that's how I do it. I just push out the pit. So once I got my avocado spread on top, I put on little bits of goat cheese. Now I like a good amount of goat cheese. I'm a goat cheese fan. So I put that all over the toast. Then I stepped outside to cut some fresh chives from our garden. Even though it's been cold, I have to say it's been also very beautiful. These chives, by the way, just came up on their own. We did not plant them, so it was very exciting to discover them because I've been using them for everything. So once I put my chives on my avocado toast, I squeezed on a little bit of lemon juice. Then I drizzled on a little bit of olive oil. By the way, this is like my classic avocado toast. You guys have probably seen me make this so many times. So then I put a little bit of red pepper flakes on top and a little bit of sesame seeds. Normally I do everything but the bagel seasoning, but I was all out. So sesame seeds sufficed. Then I put some Malden chunky salt on top, and then I cut my toast in half. So as you can see, I divvied up the omelet amongst our plates. I also pulled out some blueberries, cherries, and raspberries because we had a little bit of each left and they were kind of starting to go bad. So we really needed to get them eaten. So I've been getting a lot of questions about supplementation, and my supplements have kind of been all over the map, but these are pretty much what I've been taking consistently now for the last couple of months. I was hardly on any supplementation for the last year, just during the craziness of everything. I just wasn't. And so now I am currently on these desiccated beef liver and collagen capsules from Ancestral Supplements. I'm also taking these Shilajit dry drops, as well as methylated folate, which is something that I took consistently for like 15 years prior to this last year, and I'm really glad to be back on it. Honestly, that's something I just want to throw out there. I have been back on supplementation since I miscarried. You guys know about that if you follow me on Patreon, and I noticed a huge difference. This last year was one of the first years in my adult life that I hadn't been on supplements, and holy moly, guys, I noticed such a big difference in my energy and my mood. I'm really glad to be back on them. So we didn't exactly plan this right with an appropriate amount of time, but we pulled an organic frozen chicken out of the freezer and started to defrost it because we decided we wanted to make white chicken chili that night for dinner. So that sat in some warm water to defrost. Yes, I wish we had been simmering it in a pot of water from the start of the day to make our own broth, but we didn't. Kind of random because I didn't eat this, but I eat some form of sourdough almost every day now. So I thought I would include me feeding my sourdough starter. I've said this before, especially in recent day in my life videos, that I'm so happy to have fermented grains, sourdough bread back in my life. By the way, at this point, Dan had just gotten back from the grocery store, and one of the things he got me was this Haagen-Dazs vanilla ice cream. It's my favorite vanilla ice cream that I can find easily at the store because it's just basic ingredients. And you're not actually going to see that in this video because I forgot to film it, but I did end up having a bowl of ice cream with some of my frozen sourdough pecan white chocolate date cookies from the freezer later in the day for dessert. By the way, my starter sits above our fireplace. So I make iced tea almost every single day. I'll make some kind of iced tea. And so on this day, I decided to make this Stash green tea and matcha pomegranate raspberry tea. This stuff is so good. I really like the Stash tea line in general, but this flavor is super tasty. It's a very light tea, but I actually like it for that reason. Like, it's not super intense. And pretty much every tea bag I ever use, I double brew. So when I pour this tea over ice, I just like fill it back up with water and let it sit there and soak all day. So I recently bought some dry lentils because I want to start experimenting with different recipes using lentils. So I gave them a good rinse before I cooked them. And then I put them in a pot of boiling water, and then I turned the heat down, covered the pot, and let them simmer for maybe 15 to 20 minutes. Now I kept checking on them to make sure they weren't turning into mush. So Dan was home at this point, so he helped me out by grating up some of our last bit of manchego cheese that we had in the fridge because I knew I wanted to use that for the lentil salad I was making for lunch. And then I broke off the woody stems from my asparagus to roast in the oven for the salad. I drizzled a little bit of olive oil on it and then added some garlic powder and salt and just tossed it all together before I threw it in the oven at 400 degrees for about 12 minutes. I like to check it after 10 to 12 minutes by sticking my fork in it. I've made the mistake many times with asparagus of cooking them to the point of mush. You really don't want that. You still want it to have a little snap to it, but be tender enough for the fork to easily go in. By the way, there's my delicious tea. I'm actually sipping some of that right now, not gonna lie. So good. So I told you I'm out picking chives like for almost all 3 meals because I'm so excited that they're there. So I went back out, got some more chives, checked on the rest of my garden while I was there. These, by the way, are raspberries that are about to flower, and I'm very excited. So once my asparagus was done cooking, I let it cool off. And then once it was cool, like once the asparagus had fully cooled down, I cut them all into little bite-sized pieces for the salad. By the way, this salad was inspired by Pinterest, but totally just put together with ingredients that I had in my fridge. Side note, I really hope growing cilantro works up here because cilantro is definitely hands down one of my favorite herbs. So I gathered all my ingredients together for my salad dressing, and I started off by using about 1/3 of a cup of olive oil and then a couple of tablespoons of lemon juice. Then I used maybe 1/4 or 1/2 teaspoon of Dijon mustard. I also put in my garlic, some salt and pepper, and then I threw in a handful of my finely chopped up cilantro. And then I shook it all together like so. Now I had also cooked up some bacon in the oven, which is my favorite way to make bacon, to use on my salad as well. So that had cooked and was cooling off on a paper towel. Once my lentils had also had time to really cool down, I drizzled probably 70% of the dressing on the lentils and thoroughly tossed it all around, got it all flavored up. Then I threw in a bunch of my manchego cheese, as well as more of my herbs that I had left over, and then my chopped up asparagus and my bacon. I also threw the rest of the cheese on top and any herbs I had left as well. Spoiler alert, this salad was so good. I was very nervous because, like I said, it kind of was a little bit made up, but it was absolutely delicious. Now, I will say Logan had a really hard time with the salad, but he's also never eaten lentils, I don't think, before, and he tends to have a harder time with a lot of foods the first time he eats them. He usually has to be introduced to foods a few times. By the way, we had just picked up these organic golden kiwis from Costco, and they're so good. And baby loves kiwis. I tried to let him eat it with a spoon. That didn't work too well, but baby loves kiwis. So the same thing is true of this white chicken chili. I was inspired by Pinterest, but kind of did my own thing. So I started off by chopping up all of my veggies and getting them ready to go. But this was actually in the afternoon and I was hitting the point of getting hungry again. So I actually toasted up 1/2 of a bagel. This is my homemade sourdough bagel. It's so good. I put a little salt on top, lots of butter, obviously, and I ate that up. And then once I was done, I continued forward on making dinner. Now, I had this delicata squash that I decided to cook up to go along the side of the white chicken chili. And so I started off by cutting off each end, cutting the squash in half, and then scooping all of the seeds out from the center. Now, maybe a month or so ago, the last time I made delicata squash, I actually ended up saving some of the seeds to plant in our garden. So it's really going to be interesting to see if that works. I mean, I feel like it should work, but we'll see. I love delicata squash. If you've never had it, it's a delicate squash, like the name implies, and you can actually eat the skin on the outside. So you aren't just eating the inside flesh, you're eating the entire squash. So once I had cut it in half and scooped out the seeds, as you can see, I cut the squash into little half moon disc things. Then I drizzled my squash with a little olive oil, tossed it, once again, put a little garlic powder, a little salt, and then threw these to roast in the oven at, I believe, 425. I don't have a hard set time. I just tend to check them around 20 minutes, and I keep cooking them till they're fairly crispy-ish. Now, here's the mix of seasoning that I ended up using for my white chicken chili. I did 1/2 teaspoon of cayenne pepper. I did 1 teaspoon of dried oregano. I also did 1/2 teaspoon of white pepper and 1 full teaspoon of cumin powder. Then I put about 2 tablespoons of butter into my pot, as well as 2 tablespoons of olive oil. I mixed that all together, and then I threw in I think they call it mirepoix. Is that what they call it when it's celery, onion, and carrots? That sounds familiar. I threw all of that into the mixture, and I let that cook up for a few minutes. I did feel like it needed a little bit more butter, by the way. And I let all that cook till the onions started to go on the translucent side of life. Now, a little bit before that point, I did throw in my garlic as well. I believe this was about 3 to 4 cloves of fresh garlic that I crushed. I let that cook up for a little bit, and then I put in about 3 tablespoons of flour. I stirred that up, let that all combine. And once that had cooked for a moment or two, I threw in my spice mixture and stirred that up as well. Then I dropped in a can of green chilies, stirred that up too. Next up, I threw in my shredded chicken that we had cooked up in the Instant Pot, and then my beans. I had a mix of butter beans, navy beans, and cannellini beans, I believe. So they were all white beans, as you can see. And then the other day, Dan and I actually made bone broth, and I had a little bit left in the fridge. So I poured that into the pot, but I didn't thaw my other homemade bone broth in time. So I actually used up some chicken stock that I had from Costco. By the way, at that point, my delicata squash was coming out of the oven. So I brought my chili to a boil, and once it was at a boil, I turned it down to a low simmer so that it could simmer for about 10 to 15 minutes-ish. And while that was happening, I grated up some zest from my lime to put in the soup as well. I feel like I need a proper lime zester. This is like really difficult for me to do. But once I got the lime zested, then I cut the lime open because you always want to zest before you cut the lime open. And then I squeezed as much lime juice as I could get out of that lime into the chili. Then I cut up my cilantro very fine. And guys, I feel like this is the point where it's starting to look really delicious. And let me tell you, it was really delicious. The lime zest and honestly just the spices of everything came together so perfectly. So I feel like I can taste it in my mouth as I'm watching this. So good. So I scooped that into a bowl, and then I added a heap of raw cheddar cheese and some sour cream on top. And oh my goodness, it was so delicious. All of us devoured the chili super fast. Logan was way into this chili. Like, he devoured it super fast. And yeah, we just all agreed it was delicious. So I hope that you guys liked this video. I hope that it was helpful or inspiring to you. If you did, like I said, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps me out. Last but not least, thank you again to all of my patrons. And I will, God willing, see you guys back here soon with another new video. All right, bye guys.